the gap, standing for Jesus, standing in the gap for family and friends, standing in the gap, one love for all, so we all can make it in.
One other thing we do with our ministry is to keep you updated on current events. So much happening out in the world today that you have to stay up on it. You know why I gotta stay up on it? Well, God so loved the world that he put us in the midst of it to operate in it. And the way we operate in it in our time is to stay up on what's going on. Or we won't know how to deal with it. We're here to do things. We're the hands and feet of God. But we won't know where to use those hands or to take those feet unless we know what's going on. And we've dedicated a portion of our ministry here to what we call Gap News to keep you in touch. And Marvel is the one in charge of that. So I'm going to turn this back over to her so she can explain what's going on today. Marvel.
Okay, so I'm telling you, we are living in a fast-paced world. And every time I turn around, there's something else going on. It's great that we have Gap News so we can kind of stay on top of the things that are going on and kind of delve into what's actually happening. So over the last couple of weeks, it's been really, really heating up on the college campuses. It started out kind of slow, with the protests and the people that were anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian civilians, and then it got kind of pro-Hamas, and then the university started kind of pushing back, and then it got kind of like very, very intense this past week. And it reminded me of something from back in the 60s. So let's take a look at it.
I started getting involved in activism at Columbia in the fall of 1963 when I joined the Columbia chapter of the Congress of Racial Equality. I then became involved in the movement against the Vietnam War, and this was the first time that you had the Black Student Organization and the major anti-war organization organizing a joint protest. That took the form of an occupation of 5 buildings that ended up lasting for 7 days. Before the police were brought in to clear it out, they not only pulled students out of the buildings, they beat up a lot of bystanders. And then the whole school went on strike. When we were in those buildings for 7 days, people from all over the country, Tom Hayden came, H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, the Grateful Dead played at the Columbia strike. This captured the imagination of people all over the country who started imitating it. And it looks like the same thing happened with the occupation at Columbia. It triggered occupations all over the place.
We are trying to build on history. We are trying to build on what we learned from 1968. We seek to learn from their passion and their hope and why they were anti-war at the time.
Columbia has actually, as an institution, albeit reluctantly, claimed the legacy of the '68 protests. For the 40th anniversary, it was officially sponsored by the Columbia president.
They like the theory of disruptive protest, but not in an actuality, because we do, again, learn this in several of our classes, some of which being required at this university, but are not able to take that theory, what we've been told is right and just, and actually apply it. the university has put an emphasis on it, and because of that, the students have internalized that, realized that we have not only like the privilege, but the responsibility to continue in the shoes of those who came before us, not necessarily all using the same tactics, but ensuring that we're able to maintain the integrity of this university as one that is indeed socially aware, one that does have students that do care deeply about what goes on in the world, what goes on in our communities, and what goes on in the lives of the students that make up our community. I think that the university is essentially telling its students that we should learn about the movements of the past, but we shouldn't learn from them. But I do think that that's what education is for, right? It's to frame the way that you look at the world. It's to allow you to move through the world and act in accordance with morals and values that match the education that you've gotten thus far.
Students have been told to shelter in place. That only came out about an hour ago. Some of the students tell me, though, that because of the barricades that have been set up all over the place, okay, we see an officer approaching a window right now. You can hear people screaming, "Shame on you," "Boo." Students are all around us. They want to watch. There are also neighbors, people who live in this community here, who want to witness what happens right now. So it's very clear people have chosen not to shelter in place. There are students inside their dorms, but there are a lot of people out here on the street waiting to see what happens any moment now, Alex.
And I'm assuming it's hard to make out the shot a little bit, Antonia, but they're in full riot gear, yes?
Full riot gear. One of the officers has a shield in his arm. They have flashlights, and it looks like they're trying to find a way to break into that window that goes right into Hamilton Hall. All day long, you could get glimpses of the people who were barricaded inside. Occasionally, they would pull up a shade, unfurl a new banner that said something like "Free Palestine." They would, one even went up to the roof at one point to wave a flag for a while. And the NYPD had drone operators here who flew drones overhead to sort of monitor for quite a while before this all began. But now they're clearly trying to make an entrance through that window right there. Sounds like oh, an officer is going through the window. The first officer has entered the window. People are screaming on the street in response. Okay, here they go.
So what we're witnessing is NYPD officers in full riot gear entering Hamilton Hall on Columbia University's campus in New York City. There are a group of about 60 people inside that building. It's unclear if they're all students, whether there are outside groups or agitators that have installed themselves in the building. The echoes of 1968 are undeniable, especially in this moment. You see just an enormous police presence. That's a crane that they're walking up to get into the building as the main entrance has been barricaded. Antonia, what is the reaction? We can hear some of it, but what's going on in the crowd right now?
There are hundreds of people chanting "Shame on you."
The other breaking story of the U.S. campus at Columbia. The pro-Palestinian protest there is now over, cleared out by New York riot police. And CNN is citing police sources to say that 230 people were taken into custody last night.
Occupation of a building by those protesters, Hamilton Hall, that apparently was enough for school administrators to take this extraordinary step, and that led to these chaotic scenes where officers climbed into the building through a window, bringing out protesters. A short time after that, buses were seen leaving the scene after making those mass arrests. So today, it's really a question now of what is the next step here. They've cleared out the occupation of Hamilton Hall. They've cleared out the encampment on the campus, which was near that building. There are questions, too, from both school and city officials who have indicated that these were not all students who were involved in these pro-Palestinian protesters. The police saying they were people they described as professional agitators involved. So a calm scene for now, but certainly a lot of tension about what's been happening here at Columbia, as well as, of course, in other campuses throughout North America.
And
we've all seen images, and they put to the test two fundamental American principles. The first is the right to free speech and for people to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard. The second is the rule of law. Both must be upheld. We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent. The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail. Throughout our history, we've often faced moments like this because we are a big, diverse, free-thinking, and freedom-loving nation. In moments like this, there are always those who rush in to score political points. But this isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment for clarity. So let me be clear. Peaceful protest in America. Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education. Look, it's basically a matter of fairness. It's a matter of what's right. There's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos. People have the right to get an education, the right to get a degree, the right to walk across the campus safely without fear of being attacked. But let's be clear about this as well. There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans. It's simply wrong. There's no place for racism in America. It's all wrong. It's un-American. I understand people have strong feelings and deep convictions. In America, we respect the right and protect the right for them to express that. But it doesn't mean anything goes. It needs to be done without violence, without destruction, without hate, and within the law. You know, make no mistake, as president, I will always defend free speech, and I will always be just as strong in standing up for the rule of law. That's my responsibility to you, the American people, my obligation to the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, have the protests forced you to reconsider?
So, we had a throwback there with the 4 dead in Ohio, and I mentioned it to Art when the universities were starting to request police to come on to campuses, and it wasn't just at Columbia. UCLA had it, and some schools down in Texas and down south. So it wasn't just at Columbia, but they were probably the most publicized and the most covered. But a couple of things that were different. And I tried to find the clip. There was a really great law enforcement expert who said, you know, what happened back in the 60s? Because remember, it wasn't just the 4 dead in Ohio at the Democratic Convention in 1968. The Chicago police came in there and just beat people like they were, can't even say what they beat them halfway to death. He said that since that time, which is a long time, it's, 50 years, 60 years almost, that they have created training. And so the police from New York Police Department, they were orderly, they were organized, they had, I heard that they had intelligence, so they knew what they could do and who was all in the building and whatnot. And so they were able to go in there in an orderly way and disrupt, get those people who had destroyed property, who had disrupted the operation of the school, and they were doing stuff that was illegal. I mean, when they were peacefully protesting, that was fine. When they had their little tents out there, that was fine. But then when you're going to go and break windows and bust down doors and go in there and occupy somebody else's property, that's not legal. But they brought those people that were protesting out safely and orderly, put them in a bus and sent them down, I guess, to get booked. But nobody got killed, nobody got hurt, which was good to my heart. And so I was glad to see that the president, our president, said, yes, you have a right to protest. That's our country was founded on that. But you don't have a right to break the law. So, honey, what do you have to say?
I basically agree with all that. I mean, when I look at it at the overall picture of what we teach, which is the spiritual warfare. Because one of the aims and goals of the demonic forces is to create division between people. So you have the division between the Israelites or the Israelis and the Hamas, or the Muslims. And over here you have division between students now, because some are Palestinian supporters, some are Israel supporters, and then you have the division among all them of those that are going to be a peaceful demonstration, or those that are going to resort to violence and interference with rights of others, and all that. It's all spiritual warfare on down the track.
Yeah, it is.
And when what the president said was absolutely right. A lot of people are criticizing him and all that, and claiming that it's going to be just like it was back in the 60s, how that took down Nixon and all that kind of thing. Well, the bottom line on it is that regardless of what happens, you have to support what is right and what is wrong.
Exactly.
Get back to Micah 6:8.
That's right.
Justice. It's justice. Justice allows you to have your free speech. Justice doesn't allow you to interfere with somebody else's rights who haven't done anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I look at those people who may not graduate now or interferes with their education. That's not right. I look at Jewish students who are afraid to wear their the star and or any indication that they're Jewish and all that, because somebody's threatening violence and all that. That's not right. That's not right at all.
Not at all.
And Micah says, walk humbly with your God in reference to your justice and your mercy. Let God lead. God says, vengeance is mine, If people are out there sinning and doing wrong and all that, I'll take care of it. Leave room for that. Don't you get out in front saying you know how to take care of this. That's not following Micah 6:8. So it's current events, it's Gap News, and hopefully you're up on it, because it's going to be in the news here for a while.
Well, and Sister Michelle said she's praying for all of them, and then asking us to pray for her nephew. His name is Eugene. He works at Columbia University. So we have to pray for all of them. Pray for the whole situation. And I mean, I'm still praying that war in the Gaza Strip will end, and that these civilians will be rescued, and that they can get the humanitarian support that they need. And I just want to bring up one thing. So anti-Semitism is not okay. Threatening Jewish students is not okay. But it's also not okay to go after Muslims or after Palestinians or after Arabs. So we're a multicultural democracy here in America. We have to respect and accept all of the people that are part of our society. You got anything else, honey?
I'm done. Let's get into the class.